going to help with the conversation?
I was just kind of going to listen in and see if I could learn a thing or two about what other folks are doing, and I can share what little I know here.
Okay. Well, I know that Margot and Aaron have their insurance people on the Zoom call. So I think I'll just, Aaron or Margot, do you want to kind of take it on and kind of start us off?
Sure. My Mark is having a little bit of trouble getting in, so he's going to try calling in. So I think we'll start with Margot.
Okay.
Sorry, Margot. So Mark's going to try calling in. He can see us and hear us, but he can't get on to talk to us. So I'll just let Margot take it away, and she can introduce Adam and go from there.
Yeah, Adam is our insurance man here for our liability and property insurance. As I mentioned at the conference in July of 22, we received a notice of cancellation of our liability and property insurance. And the letter said that the insurance company said they were no longer offering coverage to institutional businesses, and the cancellation date was October 4th. So we spent July, August, and most of September trying to find coverage. And I think Adam contacted about 450 companies. And we did finally receive coverage at the end of September, but the premium doubled was twice what we had been paying. So if Adam could get on, maybe he could explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. Can I get a thumbs up or confirm that you guys can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Just didn't want to be talking to myself. Yeah, so to back up, with your policy specific, and it probably applies to about any other insurance company, as you mentioned, you were in what's called an institutional business owner's policy, which means you get lumped into some businesses that aren't face value, don't necessarily, not necessarily the same thing. So also in institutional, is where we'd put daycares, schools, churches, family counseling, as well as things that are more like what you guys are doing, like art galleries. So the prior insurance company that you were with was just seeing too many losses that they couldn't gather in enough premium to pay out the claims. Now from what I've seen, I don't think the losses were specific to businesses such as yours. They were more losses to things such as schools, churches, things like that. However, that particular insurance company, unfortunately, it was going to be difficult for them to get out of daycare, schools, churches, things like that, but still stay in and offer things to your type of business. So they just got out of the institutional business policy altogether. As we were looking for other companies, and yeah, we shopped it to a bunch of them. It is, I mean, there are, and I'm probably not telling you guys anything you don't already know, but there are some, there are some aspects that make it a little bit of an unusual risk. Like obviously we're dealing with buildings that are sometimes 100+ years old, in an underwriter, dealing with underwriters sitting in an office in Los Angeles or wherever they are, it's in their mind, it's, probably more susceptible to sustaining damage due to wind or hail. And also specific to the Cass County Historical Society, you have another thing that made it unique is that homemade, that replica boat that you guys have. That was a difficult one back when we first, when you guys first got it, and that was again difficult as we were trying to find another new carrier. Just because I've seen it myself, it's a beautiful boat, but from an insurer standpoint, sitting miles away, with the fact that it's homemade, even though it's amazing quality, the fact that it wasn't made by, I don't know, Yamaha or whoever, just your standard boat manufacturer, made it a little unique. But I mean, there are companies that specialize in it, and thankfully we found one for you guys to get you taken care of. And then the other thing, with pricing, it's the other thing, and then I'll toss it back to Margot, see if there are any questions. I mean, the other thing is just insurance industry as a whole. seeing a lot of upheaval and change due to weather, due to increased cost of goods and labor. Unfortunately, we're seeing as an industry a lot of homeowners policies are seeing some increase. A lot of personal car policies are seeing some increases. Business policies and policies such as yours, unfortunately, aren't any different. It's just a bit of a tough market from an insurance standpoint. So I will get off my soapbox and see if anyone else has anything they want to add or any questions on that.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. This is Mark, and I am online now, and I can hear everyone. So I just wanted to just jump in for a second.
Go for it.
Okay, so my name is Mark Rezach, and I represent Saunders County Historical Society. I work with Aaron Hauser on a one-on-one basis, and we came into this market working with Saunders County Historical about 3 years ago. And of course, the first thing that happens to us, and Aaron can relate to this, we get clobbered by hail. And a hailstorm came in and it damaged roofs, siding, windows, screenings, you name it, and it happened. And I think the insurance company ended up paying out $200 and some thousand plus. And just like Adam said a second ago, what happens is that the insurance companies are in the business to make money. And when they get hit hard with a claim like this right up front, what ends up happening is they got to find new ways to recoup. And so they go to higher deductibles, they raise premiums, or they cancel. And it's a fact of the insurance life. That's just kind of how it happens, and we all hate it, but that's what they do. We were fortunate enough that our provider was willing to stay on with Saunders County Historical Society. The problem being is that they raised our deductibles. Now, that was a new challenge for us. What we ended up doing was going to an excess and surplus lines company, and that excess and surplus lines company allowed us at a premium to purchase a policy that bought down the deductible. Now, it's an added expense that the board of directors and the committee at Saunders County Historical Society didn't want, weren't looking for, weren't planning on, had never been in their budget before, but it's what we ended up doing. So in the event of a loss, we were able to be able to afford, in this case, Aaron, if it's all right with you, I'm going to go ahead and tell them what the deductible was. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. We ended up going to a $50,000 deductible for wind and hail. And then what we were able to do is we were able to buy a policy that bought that deductible back down. And I believe the new deductible was $5,000. And we did that buy down through a company that is typically a reinsurance company. And for those of you that don't know what a reinsurance company is, but a reinsurance company is a company that insures insurance companies. And all insurance companies work with reinsurance companies. Many times they're across the pond, as they would say, over in Europe. But there are many that are here in the United States. And at a premium, this reinsurance company was willing to buy down the deductible. So that, in a nutshell, is what happened to us at Saunders County Historical Society. Of course, just like Adam said, there are many companies across the country that are getting out of markets like daycares and things of that nature that they're not profitable in, that they're not experts in, or that typically have high losses. Now, when we came into this market, Saunders County Historical did not have high losses, but I think it was a situation where the agent was getting out of the business, and I think the company that he was representing wanted to get out of this market. So we went to a specialty group and that specializes in museums. And I think it's worked well, hasn't it, Aaron?
Yeah, I think so. So far, we're still covered, so that's good.
There you go. And of course, when I toot my horn, my big toot is always to, work with somebody that you can trust, and we try to work with somebody that is somewhat local, and at least a Nebraska agent, because nothing worse than at claims time not knowing your agent and not knowing who to call and who you can work with. And sometimes when you work with agents in New York City, and we all remember that commercial about, I don't remember what the commercial was about, but when you work with somebody in New York City, it's kind of hard to get the service that you need. And your communities, your historical societies, your museums, it's Saunders County, it's Cass County. I even see in the state of Nebraska museum logged in here as well. It's all about local, and you want somebody that's going to jump on board and help you. Questions?
Yeah, does anybody have questions for either Mark or Adam? Or
I
this is
guess-
just kind of out there, we're not really, this isn't, this is what you need to do, but yeah, go ahead, Micah.
So I was just going to share a little bit too, just as a another option for people in general. And again, though, too, we're mainly in a room full of people that have the resources to have insurance. For the most part, there's a lot of nonprofit historical societies out there that are much smaller, and there's no way they could afford like a $20,000 premium per year. And that's exactly what we saw. In 2019, we had a flood, which our insurance company just basically just said, nah. And then after that, even though they didn't even cover the flood, they still increased our premium by probably about $10,000 a year. And so we were end up paying about $22,000 a year in just the premium alone, let alone increasing. I think we're up to like $250,000 for most coverages for the deductible, and they were still charging that much. And I know we're a big square footage for a facility, and we didn't actually even put a claim into them. They just said no, and then they just dropped us the following year. Sorry, I'm a little jaded about insurance companies. And so what my board decided to do is basically kind of like a health savings account, but it's a self-insurance policy that we put into with our bank at a CD that is accessible at any time. And the CD gets renewed annually. And the CD is actually gaining interest as we're also putting money into it. So when we decided about putting $1,500 into it each month as kind of a paying ourselves. So what we would have been sending off to a insurance company, we're actually just paying ourselves. And so that's going to increase until we need it. My board set it at like $80,000 and then seeing what we want to do with it. Right now, we're sitting about 36,000. So it would take a little bit of time. Whereas if you need it like tomorrow, it might not be there. So that is kind of the caveat. But what we found with the flood is we fundraised $250,000. We had the flood completely covered from donors, from fundraisers, from grants, and that's in our world. We know how to do that as, museums and nonprofits. So that's something that we recognize, that's something that we're doing. And the only thing that we are keeping as far as insurance is liability, just because those can be absolutely astronomical as far as, $1 million lawsuits and stuff like that. And so we do keep our liability, but that's only like $800 a month or something like that. I forget exactly, but much less than the tens of thousands, 20s of thousands that we're spending per year on, hail and wind. And then they just don't even want to cover that even when we do have it. So anyhow, so that's what we're doing right now. And I know that doesn't fit everybody's situation, but it's kind of nice knowing that it's there when you need it. And it's your own money, it's your organization's money. And you can kind of say, hey, we had a gutter that fell, or, we have to, you just have to make sure that you have a policy there that you don't spend it on other things, just trying to increase the budget. So it is kind of like we only spend it on this, we don't spend it on this kind of a situation. And so far it's been pretty effective.
Great. Anybody else have anything to add or any questions for anybody? We're by no means experts. I mean, Margot and I have just within the past couple of years have just been thrust into these situations where insurance has jumped to the top of our list of to-do lists. So any other questions or anything like that?
Aaron, if you don't mind, I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
So I don't want, and we all are homeowners. We are all have own autos. Some of us own businesses, some of us don't. As Adam had said earlier, it's all insurance of all kinds, all places, all companies right now that are taking hits when it comes to premiums. And I'm sure we all remember COVID. And I always like to tell this story, and I know I've told this story to Aaron. When COVID first hit, my grandson came after me and says, "Grandpa, I need a new barn." I said, "You need a new barn?" I said, "What are you talking about, son?" He says, "Grandpa, I need a new barn." Well, his mother was going through a divorce, and she explained that the boy had a toy box barn when he was with his when they were together, and when they split, he didn't get to keep the barn. It went back to his dad's. So I contacted my neighbor. We sat down. We drew up a blueprint. We figured out the type of barn he needed. Ran down to Menards. I bought 2 sheets of plywood. I paid $35 a sheet. So I had $70 tied up in the first 2 sheets. We went in and we started building the barn, and then I had some surgery and whatnot, and we got postponed. 30 days before his birthday, the contractor called and he says, "Hey, we need 1 more sheet of plywood to finish this barn." I said, "I'm on it." Off to Menards I went. Remember, I said the first 2 sheets of plywood cost me $35 a piece. What do you all think that 3rd sheet of plywood cost? $90. And it's situations like that, and I think we can all relate to that because we're all Nebraskans. We all know what a barn is, and it's situations like that that have really beat up the insurance companies because claims have been rolling in, and they hadn't adjusted rates and premiums for COVID and for the unexpected rate increases that were going to happen. And so now insurance companies are raising rates to offset the new normal, and I hate calling it normal, but the new normal that's out there for expenses. And they're trying to play catch up. And so I think it was Micah that made the comment, that nothing had happened and yet the rates went up. Well, that's what happens when you play catch up. And that's what we're seeing. And insurance companies are trying to control costs. I'm not trying to stand up for the insurance companies, but I want people to understand they're trying to control costs, and the increasing of deductibles is one way to do that. Of course, the second way is to increase premiums, and so that's what they're having to do at this time. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. It kind of puts it in perspective for the insurance companies too, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
None of us like it, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Ben, did you have any questions? I know you kind of came on just to listen. Or Ted and Susie? Oh, Ben, were you going to say something?
No, just interesting to hear kind of how other institutions are doing it. Ultimately, we're no different than anybody else with our insurance issues right now. We haven't fortunately been dropped, but obviously rates are going up and our insurance is good, but we're just trying to keep things competitive and healthy here.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one thing I kind of ask like the rest of you guys is like on a sustainability angle, can you even, do you have to like cut an employee just to be able to, pay the premium? None of us want to be in that situation, especially because, we try to keep a net zero, but, budget at the end of the day. And so I just don't know is like, how much are, we paying in premiums? And then if you do have to come up with a deductible, do we have the resources to come up with that deductible as well when we do need it?
Yep. It's hard. Yeah. And the things that we do have are older and may not be in the best condition to start with. So that's what we're tasked with. Yeah. Aaron or Margot, do you have anything to add to your insurance guys, what they had to say, at least on your side then of the desk?
Well, I think part of our problem too is we have several buildings that the main building is staffed, but the others are not staffed and aren't open all the time. And I think sometimes, that causes a problem, so,
Yeah,
yeah. We hadn't had, the only claim I think we ever had was for roof damage about 7 or 8 years ago, so it didn't have anything to do with claims, so.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to start looking at, I mean, just our budget overall. I mean, not just in, insurance is a big part of our budget, obviously, but we're just gonna have to evaluate our budget in general. And also look, like Margot, we have 10 buildings. Now, granted, we don't insure every building, but that's a lot of buildings to insure. We also have a couple vehicles that we insure as well. So we'll have to look at whether or not we want to keep insuring all of those buildings, or just maybe it's our main building or our, two buildings that are on the historic or the National Register. Maybe we just didn't do maybe 3 or 4 buildings rather than all 10. That's something that we're definitely going to have to look at, because our finances are starting to, it's getting down to crunch time again. I mean, I'm sure this is nothing new to anybody else. I mean, as Becky and I were discussing before everyone else came on, we were looking at fixing one problem and yet another problem popped up with our air conditioning unit. So that's going to be an unexpected expense that we weren't planning on, but it's necessary in order for us to protect our artifacts, make sure that my volunteers are not sitting there with a fan going, okay, it's a little too hot in here, that sort of thing. So it's just going to be, it's a big item in our budget, and we're just going to have to evaluate what all we can and can't do, especially with regards to budget. I mean, it could be, who knows, with the prices and the way things are going, we may decide to cut and it'll stay the same, might not, or that needle might not move. It's kind of like one year I got a raise, but the taxes changed, so I ended up getting a penny less, in my paycheck. So it could end up being something to that, like that. So yeah, it's just going to be something that we're going to definitely have to keep an eye on and start really looking at when we start looking at our budget. So. Does anybody else have any questions or for our insurance guys, or anyone else?
I'm Ted Rudberg from Dakota County, and I know they did the same in Dixon County, Northeast Nebraska, that we were forced to, we're just little county historical societies, but we dropped all our insurance except just the liability insurance. So we have liability insurance for the board, but we don't have any insurance for any of the house, the mansion and the Quonset and the one-room schoolhouse. And we kind of figured if the house went up in fire, we couldn't replace it anyway because, the historical stuff's gone. So, why insure it? But just because of finances, we're forced to do that. I don't know if that was a good idea or not, but that's just the reality of it.
That's another point my board made is, there, even if the church went up in flames or whatever, you can't, we can't replace a Swedish church that was built, here in Phelps County at the turn of, 1880s. They don't make that wood. They don't make, regardless, the history of that is gone. And so, yeah, I definitely can see that part.
I do have a question. A couple of you have said that you paid your premiums, you didn't really have any things that you had asked for, yet, like Micah, they said they wouldn't cover you, or they dropped you after you paid. Adam and Mark, is there anything you as an organization can go back on these companies because you've done your part, yet they turn around and don't follow through? Or is there some small print stuff that says, yeah, that can happen?
So this is Mark. My understanding has always been that an insurance company will not drop you mid-term unless you've done something that is extremely negligent. Typically, insurance companies will give you a 90 or 120-day notice advising you that they are not going to be reinsuring a customer.
Okay.
you know, and to be honest with everyone here, you need at least 90 days, if not 120 in some occasions, days prior to rewriting a policy to get the agent out there, that the agent take a look at your old policy, see how you were doing things and all the different things you were insuring, for them to take pictures, for them to do what's called a cost estimator. A cost estimator is a computer program where it goes in and calculates what it would cost to rebuild a structure in the event that you lost it, and they put a value on it, on what it would cost them to rebuild. And I know I spoke with an underwriter. Today's what's Friday, Wednesday, and she says it's going to take every bit of that 90 days to get it through processing and through underwriting and to actually get a policy issued if they'll write it. So that's kind of where that's at. Adam, do you have more to add?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said, and just to add on a little bit specific to the situation with the Cass County Historical Society. With them, it wasn't a matter of their, any adverse claims history with them. It wasn't a matter of a claim not being paid out. It was just that specific insurance company decided they were completely getting out of the institutional business owners policy. So thankfully, yeah, we had months in advance. Margo had mentioned how many months it took. A lot of that was going through the steps that he just outlined. But yeah, they just decided that every policy within that institutional over the course of a year, they were just going to renewal. Thankfully, they were kind enough to give us those months in advance notice. So Margo and I were able to work together and find the best policy, best coverage as possible at the best price. But yeah, it's just that company decided they weren't going to play ball in institutional anymore. So we had to shop it out to other carriers.
Yeah, okay.
One thing that I'm sitting here thinking about too, and I just want to remind the boards, is that you do have an obligation by state law to provide workers' compensation insurance to your employees. And I know we haven't talked about that, but I want to make sure that we're all aware of that, that the law requires us to carry workers' comp. And we all have a commitment to our guests and our visitors, and in our offices as well, that if somebody walks in and as they're entering the doorway, if the door hits them in the rear end and they get injured, we have an obligation to carry liability insurance. To Margo, you're laughing at my story. We all have an obligation to protect our guests, and the liability side of it is, what we have to carry in order to protect our guests. We don't want anybody getting hurt when they're visiting.
Mm-mm. No. Okay, does anybody have anything else to wrap this up?
I guess the only other thing, first of all, thank you to Adam and Mark for participating and being on the call. Appreciate that. I didn't get a chance to do some checking with our regional museum association and maybe some of the larger state or a larger national organization to see what they're seeing in terms of museum insurance, and maybe if we get more information, we will definitely pass it along to you. Either on our website or through a newsletter. Because yes, hopefully we can provide more information, because I know Dakota County, you're not unique in the fact that you had to change your insurance or drop whatever, because I think another one in the southern part of the state, I got a phone call, and I think somebody else got a phone call about they were going to have to drop their insurance to the very minimum. Otherwise, they were going to have to close. Because they just couldn't afford it. So hopefully we can find some information for people, maybe send them in a direction that they can find some more help or information regarding insurance. So yes, we'll hopefully keep on track of this, and maybe we can find some more info for people. So other than that, I think this was a great discussion. So
yeah. Yes, thank you to everybody who came on.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a happy.
Thank you to all of you
Memorial
to-
Weekend.
Thank you to all of you for sitting in with us this morning. I appreciate the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, bye-bye.